Well, last week in Isaiah, we were given a good picture, sort of a look at the person and nature of Satan. It's sort of a famous passage. It's the I will passage. And he sort of showed his true colors, that what Satan understands is that he doesn't care about God. He doesn't care about God's plan. He cares about his own. I will do this. I will raise up. I will be as high as God. I will do all of these things. And he has constantly and continually been at odds and attempting to short circuit and derail the plans and purposes of God Almighty. Okay? He is the master, the willful sin of man and the leaders of nations. His work is to get people to trust in themselves instead of in God, to desire their wishes rather than God's wishes for their life. But the problem is, when you do that, you put yourself in the path of God's chastening. If you ignore His chastening, then judgment can come, and it can then even extend to the point of even the wrath of God, depending on the depth of the wickedness involved. Satan's happy for people to worship anything but God. Anyone else but the Lord God. Okay? Things, self, the desires, passions, worship anything but that. And so today, we're dealing with God saying, enough, enough. He's picked out several countries, several nations in Isaiah's day to say, I'm drawing a line here. You're going to have to pay for your rebellion against me. At this point, he's already been successful in dividing the holy nation of God, the Jewish people, into two countries. I mean, they're virtually in a state of civil war. I have an image up here of Judah and Israel. I just want to keep that in our mind. The pink at the top is what we call, the nation of Israel. Okay, it used to all be Israel, but in this time in history, the northern 10 tribes are called Israel. You will also see them called Ephraim. Ephraim was the largest tribe of the 10 tribes, and so often its name is attributed to the whole area. So when you see Ephraim, it's always applying to the 10 northern tribes of all. And of course, in the south, you have Judah and Benjamin there in the green. And then the nation of Israel is surrounded by it. But Satan succeeded in dividing God's people in half. They're literally in a state of civil war right now. Israel has joined with Syria, now in a defense pact against the empire of Assyria. We're going to talk about them in a moment. They wanted Judah to join. Judah refuses to do it. Okay, you're too wicked. We don't want to really do anything with you guys. And so they said, we're just going to invade you as well. But God says, I don't think so. So anyway, that's sort of where God's people are. They're divided at the moment. But we're in this 11-chapter sequence, 13 to 23, where God reveals to the prophet Isaiah his purposes and plans for judgment against the many countries surrounding Israel. They're all enemies of his chosen people, his chosen land, and his chosen city. Listen to this list. We read last week of Babylon. That's Iraq. This week, Assyria. That's certainly Syria, perhaps Kurdistan. Philistia. That's Palestinian Gaza. Moab is the nation of Jordan. Okay, the city of Damascus, the capital of Syria today, right? Cush is Ethiopia. We might consider it northern Black Africa, just below Egypt. Then we're going to next week be looking at Cush, then Egypt, and then Tyre and Sidon, which are Lebanon. So we've just gone around the entire nation of Israel. And today, it's amazing. 2,700 years ago, these were all enemies of Israel. What's changed? Nothing. They're still the enemies of Israel. God gave them a wake-up call. We're seeing a wake-up call in this section of Isaiah, but they've ignored it. And so it's funny. Sometimes I feel like I'm reading the New York Times instead of the Gospel of Isaiah. So, not the Gospel of Isaiah. It's called the Gospel of Isaiah sometimes, but the book of Isaiah. Now, God is going to bring great judgment on these nations for their parts in persecuting Israel because of his nation. I want you to look at the first verse that we're going to look at, which is in chapter 14 and verse 24. It's pivotal. It's sort of the hinge point that everything hinges off of. Why everything we're reading is happening. It says this: The Lord of hosts has sworn. So God is giving sworn testimony. Okay? He says, as I have planned, so shall it be. And as I have purposed, so shall it stand. Now, I got to tell you the truth. That's one of those little verses that's kind of escaped me. As you read through and you sort of, but that stopped me in my tracks this week. As I have planned, so shall it be. As I have purposed, so shall it stand. Well, that's what we're going to be studying and observing today. What we're seeing is not random haphazard events of human history, but the plans and purposes of a powerful and purposeful God in accomplishing things. Okay? Every single thing has a purpose in God's plan. We should pay attention because that same God is still at work in this world. Okay? He's still in control. And after looking at God's plans and purposes for Babylon last week, this morning we move to Assyria. Here's a rough plan of what we'll be looking at this morning. We'll see if we get that far, but we may. But we're going to look at God's judgment on the nation of Assyria. Then on the Philistines. Chapter 15 and chapter 16 are all about God's judgment on the nation of Moab. Chapter 16 has two interesting points. There's the plea of Moab for Judah to protect them. And then there's the pride of Moab, sort of the reason Judah doesn't. Okay? And then finally, chapter 17, God's judgment on Damascus and Ephraim, Israel. So we begin with Assyria. I have a map of Assyria. And Assyria's at the very, very top. And that just disappears on these screens. Okay, Assyria is very, 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 very top. Nineveh, right under it, would be the capital. You might remember that's where Jonah was sent. Although he first took a 3-day ride in a whale, trying to avoid going there. But the Assyrians were bad dudes. If any of you are Assyrians, your people were very bad people. The Assyrians were bad dudes in their day, and by that I mean wicked, evil. They were a nation that if they came and conquered you, one of their ploys was if they took your big city, they would kill, I don't know, let's just say 1,000 people and just stack all the skulls at the entrance to the city gate. It even says, history even says they would skin people and put the skin on the walls of humans all around the city gates. Why? Terror. Terror, to terrorize people. Don't mess with Assyria. It seems like ISIS has taken their playbook right out of the Assyrian playbook today. How amazing that 2,700 years later we see the same kind of madness, right? But I just want you to see that. Now the bright part down there is Babylon. I should have used this map last week. I'm sorry. But Assyria is up there. It's moving across the top to the left and then down where you see Syria. Syria is basically where Israel is as well at the moment, the 10 northern tribes. But right now, we're talking about that nation up there. And actually, it's a very short passage because Isaiah is going to dedicate 2 chapters to Assyria later on. Okay? And so he just sort of touches on them this morning. And so we begin looking at verse 1. The Lord of hosts has sworn, as I have planned, so it shall be. As I have purposed, so it shall stand. That's one powerful quote when it comes from the lips of the Lord God. I think it's a verse impossible to limit to the context of Isaiah chapter 14. You know, there's certain things God says that you simply you chisel it in stone, and this is an attribute of God. This is how I think. This is what I do. This is how I work. And we can look at verse 1 here, or verse 24 of chapter 14 there. And God's telling us something about Him. And everything we see is Him keeping true to this. God's plans are the outworking of His purposes. Okay? Now, men take oaths to confirm what they say. We take an oath, we've got to have X number of witnesses, whatever. Well, God there says, so God swears right here. He needs no witnesses. There's no one. He only speaks truth. So what He said there could not be more true. Now here's the deal. That verse, it's fantastically good news if you're in line to be blessed or protected by the purposes and plans of God. How about a couple of examples? Jeremiah 29:11. A lot of us like that. Now this was given to Judah when they were in Babylon. But you know what? Again, this is one of those passages that reveals to us God's heart to those that are faithful. And so I think it applies in all times. At all times, it applies today. It says, "For I know the plans." There's plans, okay? "I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare, not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." The God that says, "My plans and purposes are not going to be stopped," that's glorious news when we read that, because that can't be prevented. How about Philippians 1:6? And I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Christ Jesus Christ. How encouraging is that? That's this God that just said, verse 24, standing behind something like that. How awesome that nothing is going to separate us from the love of Christ. I love that. And so the key word this morning really is purpose. It's sort of the name of the teaching today. God's purpose and plans for life. And so that's what we're going to be thinking about. Well, we want to keep moving here. Let's look at verse 25. He goes on and says, I will break the Assyrian in my land. And so he's saying, the Assyrian army, just understand the history is Assyria is now moving in and will largely have its way through all the Holy Land. They will build a huge empire, but they will never conquer Jerusalem. God will never let them take Jerusalem. And we'll be touching on that again. But he says, I will break the Assyrian in my land. Now there's other prophets that use this term, the Assyrian, in prophecies that seem to be painting a picture of the Antichrist. The Antichrist. So in a way, Isaiah is sort of getting a little flash forward as well. Okay? And so he's saying, I will break the Assyrian in my land. That tells me, too, that only God's people can ever consider themselves safe. When the enemies of God even come into his land, he says, I will destroy them, right? But we can be safe in him. He says, on my mountain I will trample them underfoot, and his yoke shall depart from them, and his burden from their shoulders. Now, Jeremiah chapter 36 and 37 outlines the destruction of the Assyrian army because they surround Jerusalem and they mock God. They mock God blatantly. It's a very interesting chapter to read if you want to do that on your own. And what happens is overnight, the angel of the Lord comes, and the scripture, God's word says 185,000 Assyrian soldiers were killed that night. So at night, sun went down, Syrian army, the terror of the Middle East. At sunrise, total silence. Total silence. Not a living one left, because God basically said, you don't come to my city, surround it and mock me. Okay? And plus I protect those people, right? So it's an amazing, amazing event. Now look at 26. This is the purpose that is purposed concerning the whole earth. Now, okay, I got to say one more thing. So, some visitors here today. Biblical prophecy. I was explaining this morning, and again, it's like Isaiah or any of the prophets God's used. He sort of gives them bifocals. They have near vision, and they have distant vision. And God will be speaking to his prophets, and it's like he'll be talking about the near future. This is the historical events for your people today, Isaiah. And then he'll just throw something in there into the future, And I have to believe that, Isaiah, the other prophets, sometimes they go, "Wow, that's what you said, Lord. I'm going to write it down." But we don't know to the extent they have full comprehension. But here's an example, because look what it says there. This is the purpose that is purposed concerning the whole earth. So God's just said, okay, I'm moving beyond just the Middle East right now. What you're going to read about is going to happen to the whole earth. Okay? It goes on and says, what else did he say? It goes on and says, and this is the hand that is stretched out over all the nations. Okay? All the nations. So now it's not just these 11 or 12 nations we're going to be talking about. It's all nations. That happens in the book of Revelation. That is the end times. And so God's just said, what you're seeing now, and here's why. Why should we care? Why should we care what happened to Philistia in 715 BC? Because it's going to happen again. The same thing's going to happen again. God here is saying it's not going to happen just in a country. There's a day coming. It's going to be the entire world and all nations. And guess what? The good old US of A falls into those great big parentheses. We're included in all nations and all people, right? Okay. And he says, his hand is stretched out, and who will turn it back? Okay. So anyway, that's the oracle at this point to Assyria. The next one we're going to look at is the oracle concerning Philistia. I have a picture to show you a rough idea where Philistia is. And that area in pink down there. Today we read in the news all the time about the Gaza Strip, south of Israel there. But the nation of Philistia was there, the Philistines, Goliath is their most famous, maybe the most famous Philistine ever, I don't know. Kind of a lousy way to be famous, but he is. But anyway, these cities of Ekron, Ashdod, Ashkelon, these were great walled fortresses. Okay? And God is now speaking of, not really stone walls don't bother me, big gates, don't, go ahead and hide behind them if you want. But let's go ahead and see what we've got here. Verse 28, in the year that King Ahaz died came this oracle. Hey, rejoice not, O Philistia, all of you, that the rod that struck you is broken. For from the serpent's root will come forth an adder, and its fruit will be a flying fiery serpent. Okay? I just want to say that what we believe, what history dictates is happening here, is that there was a king called Tiglath-Pileser. He was one of the kings of Assyria. Tiglath-Pileser began the onslaught into this part of the, we'll call it the Holy Land, okay? But he dies. And what has just been said here? Hey, don't rejoice because Tiglath-Pileser died. I've got two more guys coming. The Lord said back in chapter 10, verse 5, Assyria is the rod of my wrath. Okay, they don't know it. They think they're just, we're just into conquering countries. But God is using them as his rod of correction, if you will, and chastisement of judgment. But he's saying, what Isaiah is telling the Philistines is, don't celebrate because Tiglath-Pileser is coming, because from the serpent's root will come forth an adder. We believe this is referring to King Sargon. King Sargon was the next king of Assyria. And then it goes on and says that his fruit will be a flying fiery serpent. And that's King Sennacherib. Sennacherib. You can read about all this in 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. All the details. We can't go deep this morning on that. But he's saying, hey, don't, just because he's died, you're not off the hook. Verse 30. And the firstborn of the poor will graze, and the needy lie down in safety. But I will kill your root with famine, and your remnant it will slay. Verse 30 is just a tiny note that there probably were Jews who were faithful to God living in Philistia. And God's just saying, listen, I'm going to protect them. I'm going to protect them. But then he says, but your roots, your remnant, are not going to have my protection. So that's what we just saw right there. Verse 30, wail, O gate, cry out, O city. Melt in fear, O Philistia, all of you. For smoke comes out of the north, and there is no straggler in his ranks. In other words, there's no ragtag army. The army that's coming, they march in rows. It's not like just some big mass of humanity moving along. This is a real army coming. Verse 32, what will one answer the messengers of the nation? Well, this is what God says. The Lord has found at Zion, and in her the afflicted of his people will find refuge. And so he's just saying that any of the Jews that found themselves, maybe for business, maybe for trade reasons, they were in Philistia, he's saying you're safe. Come back to Zion. I am going to protect you there, right? And so, and it's interesting, they're called the afflicted, etc. So, God gives grace to the humble. Brings down the prideful. And I love Psalm 61:3 says, you have been my refuge, a strong tower against the enemy. Just a little reminder that God is still thinking about even his people that are in other nations. We move on now to the oracle concerning Moab in chapter 15. Let's have a picture of that. Moab. Moab is modern-day Jordan. If you look at this picture, there's the Arnon River. It looks like a line right through that red ball. Below that line has sort of historically always been Moab, even when Joshua brought the tribes of Israel in to take the promised land. But above the Arnon River used to be the ancestral land of the tribe of Reuben. And so what we see is that by the time of Isaiah's prophecy, Moab, now no one thinks of Moab like they think of Assyria or Babylon, but Moab has taken God's land away from the tribe of Reuben because of weak kings, okay, have allowed them to actually take God's holy land. So we should keep that in mind as to what's going on here. So chapter 15. Let me say a little bit more about Moab. Interesting relationship with Israel. Now Moab is named after Moab. Moab was the son of Lot through his daughter, who got him drunk after God had destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. He let Lot and his family escape with children. Two girls come up with this great plan. Let's get Dad's drunk. There's no guys, no men for us to be married to. And we'll have him father some children. And so Moab was one of those sons that was born. And Moab went down there. And it's interesting that when Joshua brings his people to the banks of the Jordan, God says, don't bother, do not conquer and take away the land of the Moabites because they are related to Abraham. And so God's honoring that relationship to Abraham. So they don't get overwhelmed. But just north of them, the Reubenites, now what I want to say too, this land was beautiful grazing land in that day. I mean, just seas of sheep and stuff, we imagine. It was an agricultural wonderland at that time, okay? And that's why the Reubenites and the Gadites said, hey, we're happy on this side of the Jordan. We're just going to take our land here. You guys can go across. And the deal was, well, you got to come with us and fight all these other Canaanite tribes. But once that's over with, you can come back. And that's what happened. But all I'm just saying is that, so that's the deal. They weren't supposed to ever take their land. We're supposed to leave them alone. Now, when we get to the time of the Judges, the book of Judges, there was a king Eglon who would make raids into Judah and Israel, and so it was sort of like a thorn in their side, but they never did all that much. We remember King Balak. Balak hired this guy Balaam to pronounce curses. He said, I want you to curse Israel so that they're defeated. And Balaam's the famous guy. The donkey talked to him and said, hey, you're nuts to do this, okay? Do not be calling curses on God's people. But he does, and little or nothing comes of it. But I'm just saying, it's another story related to Moab. Saul, David, and Solomon were big kings, and they ruled Moab, but Moab was just would send tribute to Israel. The tribute was 100,000 sheep a year. That's what they had to send as tribute back to Israel, to David, Saul, David, and Solomon. Okay? Now, there's another reason, I think, why God said to preserve Moab, because a pretty special woman is going to come out of Moab and find her way to Israel, and her name is Ruth. Ruth the Moabitess. Okay? And Ruth is important because if you look in the genealogy of Jesus Christ, she's there. One of the, I think, 4 women in the genealogies of Jesus. And she's actually the great-grandmother of King David. And so there was reason for Moab to be preserved. I mean, God knows all. I have my plans and my purposes, right? I just believe that has to be one of them, okay? And finally, when David was young, and we know there was a season where Saul was chasing him all over the place, trying to kill him, he took his mother and father, so that'd be Jesse. His mother's name escapes me, but he took them to the king of Moab at that time and said, will you watch my mother and father? I've got to go hide in the mountains. Okay, and so that was sort of cool that they were willing to do that and did that. But anyway, a little history about Moab. Let's read on now. Verse 1, because Ar of Moab is laid waste in a night, Moab is undone. Because Kir of Moab is laid waste in a night, Moab is undone. These were the 2 main big cities in the nation of Moab. And what Isaiah is saying, there's a day coming where they're both going to be taken and destroyed overnight by Assyria. Okay? And here's what he says about the king. He has gone up to the temple and to Dibon, to the high places, to weep over Nebo and over Medeba. Moab wails. And so what that is saying is that the king of Moab went up to his temple to these other gods. They didn't worship Jehovah. So here it is, these cities have been destroyed, and he's going up and praying to these non-existent gods. So it's to no avail, right? No avail. Okay? And then he's moaning over these cities. These are cities of Moab that were conquered. And then we have expressions of mourning. Every head is baldness, every beard is shorn. In the streets they wear sackcloth. On the housetops and in the squares, everyone wails and melts in tears. And Heshbon and Eliah cry out, their voices heard as far as Jahaz. Therefore the armed men of Moab cry aloud. His soul trembles. And then catch this, verse 5. Isaiah speaking, my heart cries out for Moab. For fugitives flee to Zoar, that's way in the south, the bottom of the Dead Sea. To Eglath, Shalayah. For the ascent of Lahith, they go up weeping on the road to Horonaim. They raise a cry of destruction. Okay, all through there, we've just seen a number of different words that point to mourning, don't they? Mourning and weeping and sorrow and all of that. And why does that happen? I mean, maybe there's a moment here for a word for us. Isn't that the fruit of sin, ultimately? Isn't that ultimately what sin brings you to? Mourning and weeping? I mean, do you hear songs of joy and celebration in the heroin shoot-up houses, in the crack houses, in the places where young girls are trafficked. There's no celebration. That's the end point of sin, okay? And we have to understand that's why God's doing what he's doing, not because he's just mad or something. It's because these people are guilty of terrible, terrible sin. And you know what? When that's the case, there's going to be sorrow and weeping and the tearing of clothes and the old Jewish shaving, cutting your beard off, all of those things. And that's what's going on. We shouldn't be surprised. Verse 6 speaks of there may be famine and drought. It says the water of Nimrim are a desolation. The grass is withered, the vegetation fails, the greenery is no more. Therefore the abundance they have gained and what they have laid up, they carry away over the brook of willows. For a cry is going around the land of Moab. Her wailing reaches to Eglaim. Her wailing reaches to Beer-Elim. For the waters of Dibon as a city are full of blood. It reminds me of stories of the Civil War and stuff where they would have a great battle in a creek or something, and thousands of men would be shot and killed, and they said the rivers would run red with blood. For I will bring upon Dibon even more a lion for those of Moab who escape, for the remnant of the land. It suggests, even if you think you've gotten away, now that lion is a real lion. Some translations say lions. Maybe God's plan. If you think you're getting away, I'm going to send lions. If you think you're going to escape, now maybe the lion though refers to generals or something of the Assyrian army. I imagine most nations have a lion somewhere in their coat of arms or one of their symbols. Verse 16 though becomes interesting. It's sort of two parts. Moab cries out to Judah for protection, for plea, but then we find out why it can't be acted on by the Jews in Judah and Bethlehem, in Jerusalem, because of basically it's a lie and Moab's pride. They're just trying to save their skin, right? So look at verse 16. Send the lamb to the ruler of the land from Selah. Now Selah is the modern city of Petra. Well, it's not very modern. It's actually an ancient rock city. It's amazing. We think that that's a place where the Jews are going to be able to run, the Messianic Jews are going to be able to run and be saved during the tribulation. That God's going to protect them there in Petra. It's an amazing place. You can go there. But it says send the lamb. Remember I said that the tribute used to be sheep? Well, again, due to weak kings, they stopped doing that. God's going, well, maybe you ought to still send the tribute. And by the way, you might want to have some regard for the king of Judah that you're sending this tribute to. Resume paying that and also submit to God. Verse 2, but here's what the people are like. They're like fleeing birds, like a scattered nest. Okay, so people are confused and weak and vulnerable. All we got to do is look at what's going on in Syria as the refugees leave an area. You hear ISIS is coming, and what do you see? It's this right here. We're getting to see these things on the news now. Okay, so they're fleeing birds. So are the daughters of Moab at the fords of Arnon. Now here comes the plea. Now some translations, I think the New Living Translation, it says the ambassadors go to Jerusalem and ask this. Maybe so, but here's what it says. Give counsel, grant justice, make your shade like night at the height of noon, shelter the outcast, do not reveal the fugitive. Let the outcasts of Moab sojourn among you, be a shelter to them from the destroyer. Hey, let us come hide. Protect us. Let us come and be refugees in Judah and Jerusalem. That's what Moab's saying. Did you catch one little thing? Go back and look at verse 3. This is what they're saying. Give counsel, grant justice. Grant justice. Basically, aren't they saying that what the Lord God is doing is unjust? This wrath of God, they see it as unjust, and they're going to Judah saying, hey, grant justice because we're being treated unjustly. They don't understand that they're in the crosshairs of God for judgment. And so they're asking very clearly there. Now, the next passage, the King James versions really turn this around for some reason. That's how they interpret their manuscripts, to where now in these next few verses, it's as if Judah is asking Moab to give us protection in the future. Okay? Now we know that happens in Revelation. There's a season where that happens in the end times. Okay? But that really seems to turn this whole section upside down. And I do prefer, I think, how the ESV handles this section, that it's still, and so the way I see the next few verses, it's Moab. They just said protect us, and then it's sort of like they know how to press buttons. I believe they know how to say the things that the people of Judah, the worshipers of Jehovah God, would want to hear. They know what to say to further entice them, to let them come in and be refugees. And so that's how I'm going to teach this. And it starts like this. It says, when the oppressor is no more, and destruction has ceased, and he who tramples underfoot has vanished from the land. So in other words, when the season of attack by Assyria is over, then a throne will be established in steadfast love, and on it will sit in faithfulness the tent of David, one who judges and seeks justice and is swift to do righteousness. Now, as best as I can understand this passage, that's just saying the Moabites understood that Jews, David's now history. Okay? The Jews are longing for David again. His son Solomon ended up being kind of a disaster, and then it's just one weak king after another. Half of them not even believers, apostate. Half of them believers, but weak kings. And so the Moabites know, we're just going to say, hey, if you help us, we're sure God's going to put another David on the throne of Judah. So that's sort of my sense of that. And it's interesting, though, that, again, their verbiage is one of those things, though, that will sit on top of prophecy of the end times, that in Christ's millennial reign, he does reestablish the throne of David in the millennial reign of Christ, chapter 19 and 20 of Revelation. And so, again, Solomon getting those little prophetic bifocals, looking for word, maybe not even realizing it. So that's their plea. Now, in verse 6, we sort of hear why it is rejected. And this is the pride of Moab. Look at verse 6. We have heard of the pride of Moab, how proud he is, of his arrogance, his pride, and his insolence. So this could be Judah responding to this request. This is their answer, if you will. Okay, we have heard of the pride of Moab and how proud he is, of his arrogance, his pride, his insolence, and his idle boasting. He is not right. Therefore, let Moab wail for Moab. Let everyone wail, mourn, utterly stricken. Okay? And I just want to say that I think what verses 6 and 7 show us is that Moab wanted Judah's protection, but not Judah's God. They wanted to be helped and saved on their terms, not on God's terms. But we're looking at God's plan and God's purposes playing out, not man's plans and purposes. And there's no way that it's God's plan for them to escape this way. So the sin of pride is what brings down Moab. Verse 8, some more descriptive verses here. For the fields of Heshbon languish, and the vine of Simbal, the lords of the nations, have struck down its branches, which reached to Jazer and straight to the desert. Its shoots spread abroad and passed over the sea. Therefore I weep. There's this idea again of sorrow. Therefore I weep with the weeping of Jazer. For the vine of Sibmah, I drench you with my tears. Isaiah is sorrowful over their suffering. But so is God. God takes no joy. What does he say? I take no joy in the death of the wicked. But you know what? I think anytime we see God judging people, we see them suffering under the weight of their sin, our response shouldn't be, good, about time they got what's coming to them. It's like, man, my heart breaks. They didn't have to be going through this, Verse 10, and joy and gladness are taken away from the fruitful field and the vineyards. No songs are sung, no cheers are raised, no treader treads out wine in the presses. I have put an end to the shouting. Some think that's Isaiah saying, I've stopped my people from celebrating the destruction of Moab. Okay? It could be referring to the fact that all of this judgment's going on and no one's singing, as I alluded to a little bit earlier. But this idea, he says in verse 11, therefore my inner parts moan like a lyre for Moab, and my inmost self for Kir Hareseth. I'm reminded of a passage in Proverbs chapter 24, and verse 17 says, do not rejoice when your enemy falls. Let not your heart be glad when he stumbles, lest the Lord see it and be displeased. I find it hard sometimes not to celebrate a little bit when wicked people go down. This gives me pause. This gives me a little check. Maybe that's saying something about my heart. That someone like that, frankly, when there's a drone strike on ISIS, I don't know how well I do this, What did Jesus say from the cross? Father, forgive them. guys just nailed them on it. Forgive them, for they don't know what they do. I'm reminded of his lament over Jerusalem, the city that he says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. This is Matthew 23:37. The city that kills the prophets and stone those who are sent to it. How often I would have gathered your children together as hens gather their brood. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And I believe in Luke's gospel it said he wept. He wept as he said that. So I thought something for us to think about. When someone like that dies, they were someone's bouncing little baby boy one day, someone's little daughter like we dedicated today. They were the child that laughed and ran through the house and grew up and played with other children. And what gleefully glowed over their destruction. It's just something for us to think about. Something for us to think about. For we're the people of Christ, the ones who show love. Amen. It's like the thing. Verse 12, then Moab presents himself when he lays himself on the high place. So he's weary. He's been up up in his false temples, worshiping false gods of no value. And when he comes to a sanctuary to pray, he will not prevail, because these gods can't do anything. This is the word that the Lord spoke concerning Moab in the past. Look at verse 14. But now the Lord has spoken, saying, in 3 years, like the years of a hired worker, the glory of Moab will be brought into contempt. What that means, in 3 years, like the years of a hired hand. This is the idea of a Jew going and becoming a servant, and they had this process where you could declare yourself a servant of another Jewish family, and they would take care of you, but you'd be their servant. But it was a very detailed thing. It was like a contract. It's like, from this date, for 1 year, or 3 years, or 6 years, whatever it is, and he's saying, in 3 years, like the years of a hired servant, not about 3 years, not 2 years and 9 months, not 3 years and 6 months, in 3 years, and I think you could say to the day, everything we've just read in those 2 chapters is going to happen. And you know what? Historically, it does. You can look back at the different attacks and thrusts of Assyria, and boom, you can see this 3-year prophecy being answered. And it says the glory of Moab will be brought down in contempt, in spite of all his great multitude, and those who remain will be very few and feeble. Wow. Now, why 3 years? I've alluded to this before in Revelation. Why 3 years? Why not tomorrow? Grace. I always see this stuff as grace. He's going, okay, I've just told you what's going to happen in 3 years. You have 3 years to change your mind, change your ways. Come to the temple in Jerusalem. Make the sacrifice. Do what's necessary. Come and give glory to the God of Israel. And he'll protect you. This isn't a done deal. But if you don't, this is God's will. Okay, this is his plan and purpose. And so I just see that in grace. In Revelation, I've shared this with other people, but it's neat. Some of the judgments, we have the seal and the trumpet and the bowl judgments. There's times where it says, and the angel blew his trumpet, and 1/3 of mankind died. Why 1/3? Why not all? Let's just get this over with. We make Revelation a lot shorter, Lord. 1/3. Why? Grace to the 2/3 that were left behind. God could have killed everyone in judgment because they were sinful and wicked and denying Christ. Okay, but he does 1/3. And then another time it'll be 1/4. And another time 1/2. Whatever it is, why? Grace. And then sending angels overhead and turn from destruction. Grace. The God of grace. No matter what he's doing, in the midst of wrath, he's still trying to save. He's always trying to save. What a great God we serve. I love that.
Amen.
Let's see if I can. Man, I can't. Okay. We'll pick up chapter 17 next time. These are pretty audacious plans. But I think what I want to sort of say about what we talked about today, just really quickly, and then we're going to sort of prepare our hearts for Communion Sunday. All this is a wake-up call. To me, this is all a wake-up call for my nation, for the world today, because what he's showing in just particular nations, he just said in the beginning, one day I'm going to stretch my hand out to all people and all nations. Jesus is telling me, wake up and pay attention. Look at what's going on in the world. Don't be caught unawares. These are tough judgments, but nothing compared to the seal, trumpet, and bowl judgments of Revelation. Everything we just read, by the way, happened pretty much as Isaiah described it. We read verse 24 in chapter 14, and this God wrote the end time prophecies too. The God that in verse 24 or 14 said, my plans and my purposes will stand, is the same God that said every word of the book of Revelation, every word of the prophecy of Amos and Jeremiah and Zechariah and Ezekiel, and all of those prophecies came through. So church, I'm just saying, let's always be awake and understand that maybe this is going to help us understand what's going on, but we certainly don't want this sort of thing coming to our families. There's a few little snippets in there. He protects the faithful, his remnant, wherever they are. We are protected by Christ in our faith today. Let's not lose heart. Okay? It's his plan and his purpose to judge sin, though. That is his great plan, to redeem mankind, but to judge unrepentant sin one day. And in Revelation, he completes that task. Sort of an interesting segue into communion, but we want to do that. Band, you guys can come up. This is going to be pretty short. So we had a couple of chapters of judgment and wrath. Yet God making sure that his faithful know he has not forgotten or forsaken them in the midst of that wrath. His words of hope to his. He is yet their refuge in the storm. And today, the Christian faith is literally suffering a genocide in the world. It's been declared that officially. But those who die have not been forgotten or forsaken. You remember that. Those who die, they have not been forgotten or forsaken, for this life is not God's best for us. It's what comes after that, if you remain faithful. What comes next is best. And in Revelation 14:13, the same God speaking through Isaiah today spoke of the faithful saints trying to survive the great tribulation, the great judgments of God in the end times. And he said this, here is a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. And blessed are those who die in faith in Jesus Christ. Our best is not this, our best is yet to come.